Our conversation today is focused on our AARP fraud prevention work, protecting veterans and families, and offers you an opportunity to learn about the tactics that criminals, yes, I said criminals, use to target our veterans, service members, and military families. Veterans and their families are dealing with real unique challenges when it comes to consumer fraud protection, financial resilience, and connecting to earned benefits. My name is Marilyn Diaz, and I am a volunteer with AARP. And today we are welcoming Troy Broussard, who is a senior advisor for the AARP Office of Community Engagement, working specifically on the AARP Veterans and Military Families Initiative. Troy is going to be joined today by Carol Cando Pineda, counsel in the Division of Consumer and Business Education at the Federal Trade Commission. Let's get this party started. I'm going to hand it over to Troy. Thank you, Troy. All yours.
Thank you so very much, Marilyn. I am honored to be here today. I appreciate Carol and the FTC's participation as well. You know, we've worked very closely together over the past few years on helping veterans to stay safe. So I guess your question is, why is AARP concerned about making sure Americans, veterans, and military families are protected from fraud and scams? Well, of our 38 million members that we do have with AARP, nearly 6 million of those members are current or former military. And veterans and military families are 40% more likely than civilians to lose money to con artists pushing these scams and fraud. And that is the reason why I'm going to share with you some tools that we have and some free resources to really help you prepare our veterans and their military families to fight back. You know, with our AARP Operation Protect Veterans, a most recent survey we did in late 2021, we found that 80% of veterans have encountered scams that specifically target those with current or former military service. 80%, yes, that is not a misprint. And look, we'll dive deeper into the survey in just a little bit with some really important stats to share with you. We are working to empower consumers to spot and avoid these scams and to provide support and guidance to victims and their families when these frauds happens. Next slide, please. So today I just want to kind of go over our agenda and make sure that we're all clear on this wonderful webinar today. You know, our veterans don't deserve to be taken advantage of because of their service. Yet every day these scammers attempt to defraud our veterans of their hard-earned benefits, steal their identity, or take their savings. Today, Carol and I will focus on the latest scams targeting veterans and military families, answer your questions, and share more information about how you can stop these scammers in their tracks. So now what I would like to do is transition to Carol so she can provide you an overview of the 2021 Consumer Sentinel data. Carol?
Thanks, Troy, and thanks, Marilyn, and to all my friends at AARP for having me over to talk a little bit about fraud and scams. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the numbers that we see in the reports that come in from consumers. So first of all, before we take a deeper dive, I want to let you know that all consumers are losing a lot of money to fraud. In 2021, FTC got 2.9 million fraud reports. We've got many more complaints about other kinds of things, but just on hardcore fraud, it's 2.9 million, quite a bit. And the losses are 6.1 billion for 2021. Huge sums of money. So let's drill down a little bit and focus on the reports that we heard from veterans and military retirees. So according to the reports that we got in Sentinel, veterans' total fraud losses were $177 million, very large sums. The median loss was about $570, pretty large. So if you look at the data compiled over 5 years, veterans reported $563 million in total losses. The median loss goes up to $677. So that median loss is going to change depending on the community, depending on the period of time, depending on the type of scam. But just for the median to be at 677, that's pretty large. So for particular scams, as I mentioned, it can be even larger. So, for instance, veterans' median loss to government imposters was $1,500. To business imposters, it was $950. And for prizes, sweepstakes, and lotteries, the median loss was over $2,000. It was $2,100. Very, very large numbers. Next slide, please. So I also wanted to mention, while we're talking about the scope of the problem, wanted to mention something new that we're seeing. I wanted to touch on cryptocurrency. The use of cryptocurrency in all kinds of fraud has skyrocketed. It's very prevalent in investment scams, but not just investment scams. All kinds of other scams are now starting to use cryptocurrency as a payment method. So for all kinds of imposters, not just investments. And it's grown enormously. In 2021, the crypto losses in scams was 60 times higher than the losses that were in 2018. That's not a misprint, 60 times higher from 2018 to 2021. So enormous jump. These are really staggering numbers, and we'll touch on them a little bit more when Troy highlights the findings from AARP's Scambush survey and report. So I'm going to turn it back to Troy now.
Thank you, Carol. You know, no matter how many times Carol and I, we worked together on many occasions doing these types of webinars, and, you know, just hearing those startling statistics or just lets us know that there's, number one, too many scams out there, but the ones that are targeting civilians and veterans are just outrageous. So hopefully after this call here, this webinar, we can both provide some information to each of you so that you can, you know, assist veteran and military families and civilians as well. But what I want to talk to us about, I want to reiterate that our veterans don't deserve any attempts to be taken advantage of for their service. Yet every day, these scammers attempt to defraud our veterans of their hard-earned benefits, steal their identity, and most importantly, take their savings. So what we've done at AARP, we put together our AARP Fraud Watch Network. It tracks the latest scams targeting veterans and military families and provides the latest information about how you and your communities can stop scammers in their tracks. We work together with Operation Protect Veterans, which is a joint effort between AARP and the United States Postal Inspection Service to help veterans and military families fight back and protect themselves and their loved ones by raising awareness of scams and fraud. You know, this initiative really provides like free reports on the latest scams targeting veterans and military families, as well as some wonderful community programming as well. What you can do is you can go to aarp.org/veterans or aarp.org/vets fraud center, where you can learn about the latest scams and frauds targeting those who have served. And of course, also in the fraud center, you will also find an award-winning free AARP Watchdog Alert Handbook Veterans Edition that just recently won an award, and it's filled with lots of information that can help you be successful as well to protect yourselves. Next slide. Let's get some more into this survey that we talked about, which is the Scambush survey that was done back in November of 2021. It compares military community to civilian fraud. You know, it provides further insights into the best practices. And again, it found that veterans and military adults are 40% more likely to lose money to scams and fraud than civilians. And astonishingly, 4 out of 5 military and veteran adults are targeted by scams related to their military service or their benefits. You can find this report at aarp.org/vets fraud report 2021. Next slide, please. So just to dig a little deeper into the research, here are some of those veterans and militaries who lost money to these specific scams. The main ones were lump sum for VA benefits, updating military records, donating to veteran charities, reduce taxes owed, prescription drug, and of course, education expenses paid for. So what we find is that these scammers really try to connect with veterans, and because we all know that these veterans have access to all of these these opportunities to where the scammers can take advantage of them. So this is where we want to put everyone here on alert to be on the lookout for these as well. Next slide, please. So here are some top veteran military service specific scams. Donate money to support your fellow veterans and military families. That focus is to lean on veterans, want to give back and want to protect their veteran colleagues. Lower home mortgage rates, free medical equipment, government programs with benefits, cremation, burial discounts, as well as prescription drug assistance. All of these specific military scams are to really target veterans and their families and to take away their hard-earned benefits that they've done by serving our country. Next slide. And then here are just some general population scams that we wanted to share with everyone. And what I want you to pay attention to this graph is take a look at the where it's red and where it's green. The green is what's happening when these scams happen to veterans. Look at how it increases all over the different types of scams. Grandparent scams, 36% more targeted than 17% in civilian life. The tech support scams, 27 to 21%. IRS imposter scams, 25 to 17. So you're seeing a focus area by these scammers to really target veterans. You know, it's a worrisome trend that emerged from the report that clearly shows that veteran and military are targeted by scammers. Carol, I'll go to you now, Carol.
Thanks so much, Troy. Appreciate it. So we can go to the next slide. So as Troy really summarized really well, the various kinds of stories that you might see and the various kinds of scams that try to take advantage of veterans. So the first thing I want to highlight for you is that the reason that any particular community, including veterans, is targeted is because they either have some sort of access to benefits, or they've got some sort of money, or there's the scammers see that it's going to be worth their while to try to target that group. So veterans have access, especially to benefits and perhaps to long-term savings from, having worked an entire lifetime and having money in the bank. So that's why the scammers are going to set a veteran in their sights, right? Because they know there's going to be a payoff for them. Another thing that scammers do is that they follow the headlines. So they know when there's a gap in knowledge or there is some confusion about an issue. So for instance, during COVID, most of the scams, before that, we were seeing things like tax identity theft and scams where people were impersonating Social Security Administration and trying to get you to pay to get your Social Security number back on a list, or they would say that it was compromised and to get it fixed. That went almost overnight to COVID type scams, whether it was for hawking phony treatments or vaccinations or some kind of cures or PPE and those kinds of things, because scammers knew there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of confusion, and people were willing to do anything to get a treatment, get a cure, to try to protect themselves. And so they took advantage of that emotion, of that fear. So, and the headlines, all right, that's what everybody's paying attention to. So scammers are going to go to that. And so they're going to do that with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. They also create a sense of pressure and urgency. They want you to act immediately. And so they know that if you stop and take a breath, if you talk to somebody that you trust, if you think about it for a minute, something isn't adding up, and they know that you'll stop and you'll, sort of realize, I shouldn't give them any information. I should not give them my credit card number. I shouldn't pay them. I shouldn't do what they're asking me. Let me check this out. They know if they let you go, that you're not coming back. And so that's why they want you to act immediately. That's why there's so much pressure. And legitimate government officials, legitimate businesses, legitimate charities are not going to pressure you in that way to get you to pay them immediately. And really the biggest warning sign that you can share with your friends, your family, people that you work with, is if somebody asks you to pay for something by gift card, by wiring money, by a prepaid card, or by cryptocurrency, don't. It's a scam. Even legitimate instruments like a gift card or a prepaid card can be misused by scammers. Nobody legitimate is going to pressure you to pay in those ways. Only a scammer will do that. And I also want to mention that there are other kinds of scams. We talked a little bit about the benefits, that veterans have access to benefits, and scammers want to tap into that. They want to get to those benefits somehow. So scammers are going to try to impersonate somebody from TRICARE, which is a military personnel healthcare program, and they're going to contact you and say they've got some sort of special program that's COVID related, or perhaps another disease, or vaccine related. They may call and tell you that your account numbers are incorrect and you need to get them fixed. You need to pay them. They can get it fixed right away. They may threaten all kinds of very dire circumstances to scare you into trying to share information or to pay them, especially through those methods that I just mentioned. They may also try to pressure you to take your benefits in a lump sum. And they may pressure you into applying for secret benefits. They may try to trick you into thinking that there's some benefits that you've never heard of, but they've got special access and they can try to connect you with those benefits. You don't want to listen to any of those things. There's somebody that's just trying to get money from you or a percentage of your benefits. And again, if somebody pressures you to pay with a gift card, with prepaid cards, with cryptocurrency, don't do it. It's a scam. Don't wire money to somebody that you haven't met in real life. Next slide, please. So one more thing to reiterate about VA. We've talked a little bit about these impersonators, about the imposters. They come in all different stripes. There's all different stories, and they evolve over time. So way too many for us to enumerate them all right now. But for veterans especially, you may be targeted for the kinds of scams where the impersonator says they're from the VA. They may want money to confirm your Social Security number. It may come through a phone call. It may come through an email. It may be a text message. They may ask for your Social Security number and say that they need personal health information to process some paperwork. You may get a text that's got link that says it's from the VA, that's got links in it, and they want you to click a link to complete some sort of process or to provide personal information. VA is not going to contact you that way, and they're not going to ask for information in that way. And so, if somebody does that, it's a scam. So you want to go to VA's website, which is va.org. The FTC's website is consumer.ftc.gov. Or to the AARP Fraud Watch Network, which is aarp.org/Fraud Watch Network, or even the Postal Inspection Service, uspis.gov. That we all have information that tells you about the latest scams that are trying to target veterans and the stories that they're telling. And I wanted to reiterate just one last point. Filing for your benefits is free. You can get help to put together all your paperwork, but you can get it from the local veteran service organizations, and they will do it for free. Go to benefits.va.gov/VSO, and you can learn a lot more about that, how you can get free help to do your benefits. Next slide. Okay, I know I keep saying one more thing, just one more thing, but this really is the last thing. That scammers may reach out and say they can get you copies of your service records. They can speed up the request to get your service records. We all know you're going to need to get those service records for different applications and for different purposes. You're going to need to have them, and maybe you need an extra copy. Scammers are going to come out of the woodwork and try to pressure you to pay them to process those requests for you. You never have to pay. Service records are always free. Never, never, never pay for those service records. That's a scam. I'm going to turn it back to Troy now.
Okay, Carol, thank you so much. I'm gonna reiterate something that Carol mentioned, and we're gonna stay on this slide because, like Carol said, she had one more thing. I just want to add some more to it. It is important. Veterans never have to pay for their own service records. If you're told otherwise, it's a fraud or a scam. Hang up the phone, delete the email, or whatever you have to do. I mean, I love the way Carol brought this up. This is something that is so important, especially to our veterans, military families, and even caregivers to veterans as well. If you hear this, this is red flag number one. Please hang up. Please hang up the phone. So now let's get into some tips. Next slide, please. So here are 5 steps that you can utilize to protect your family against fraud. So before we get into questions with Marilyn and Barb, and before we get into that, I wanted to make sure just to go over these 5 steps with everyone to make sure that everyone is very clear and it's something tangible you can take away and put into use as soon as the webinar is complete. The first thing that I would share was that, safeguard that social security number, that DD form 214. And for those that are on the call, DD form 214s are the official military records of veterans, current military. And what it does, it has a lot of important information on there. There's your social security number on there. So you want to be wary to make sure that someone won't ask you for let's verify some information on your DD form 214. Let's start by verifying your social. And then once you give that person your social, guess what happens? They now can go ahead and steal your identity, create new lines of credit, and create large headaches for you. So you want to make sure that you stay away from that. Protect your personal information, both online and via the mail. If you're online, make sure you have the most updated software, spyware, malware, to make sure that no one is gaining access to your computer. And I think this is the one that's extremely important as well. Monitor your bills and your financial accounts. Numbers tell a story. So when you're seeing money moving out that that you were not responsible for, so regular checks and checking that checking account and your banking accounts to make sure that there's not any unscrupulous activity that's happening. Checking your credit report. We have the 3 major credit bureaus. It's always good to get those free reports. Make sure you check to see that there's not someone opening up new lines of credit, which can impact your credit score. So you want to be very careful of that. And, the last tip would be secure your personal identification numbers and passwords. Make sure that there are a challenge, that for someone to decode and, get access to your personal information. And I think the key thing of these steps is that you stay vigilant about them and really, really work to make sure that even if you're a caregiver of a veteran or their family, make sure that you're aware of these so that you can help them, transition through this process and protect themselves, which is extremely important. So the bottom line is protect your personal information, monitor your accounts, and be cautious to scams. But I will share with you something that Carol mentioned was try to make sure that you are calm, because the scammers are really focused on getting you at a heightened level of insecurity. And then at that point saying that what I'm offering to you will provide you that security. So I think it's extremely important that we remain calm. I always say develop your no script, okay? So be prepared before that phone call comes. Be prepared to say, I'm not really interested in donating to this veteran charity. However, give me the website. I'm more than happy to go look them up and do some more research, or just flat out say no and hang up the phone. So those are some tips that we both wanted to share with you. And these are extremely important as you're navigating this process here. So let's go to the next slide, please. And getting back to, before we get to questions, that I hope you guys have a robust amount of questions for us, we want to talk about some of the resources that we mentioned. Carol mentioned some resources. I want to share with everyone some key features that we do have with our AARP Veterans Fraud Center. You can reach it at aarp.org/Vets Fraud Center. And it's a one-stop shop. It has the Watchdog Alert Handbook, the Veterans Editions, which gives you those specific scams targeting veterans and their families. You have some of the top military veteran service-related scams and prevention tips. And the cool thing about that, it's all in one location. So you don't have to search for it. It's in one location. Of course, we have our Fraud Watch Network helpline to where you can report suspected fraud and scams. We've got information on Operation Protect Veterans. And something that's extremely important is that we have a free online peer support group sessions for emotional recovery of fraud, because it is emotional. And, you heard Carol mention some reported numbers from the FTC and from the report. Those were reported numbers. More than likely, when you've been scammed, that's not something that you want to go and report. But if you have been scammed, I think what's important, if you want to do something for your fellow citizen, your fellow veteran, is to go ahead and report that so that we could share it across all of our members to make sure it doesn't happen again and stop the scammers in their tracks. So I wanted to make sure to go over these last bits of resources before we get to the questions. So now I would like to bring Carol back onto the screen and then turn it over to Marilyn and Barb, who will take us through and navigate us through the question portion of today's event. Carol, Marilyn, and Barb.
Very, very informative discussion. Let's go ahead and get started with these tantalizing questions. Barbara, do you want to start with the first one?
Sure. I guess maybe it's an obvious question, and you've gone over quite a bit, but why do scammers target military veterans more than civilians? It really bothers me that group is targeted.
As I had sort of touched on very briefly, the reason that veterans are targeted is very similar to the reasons why military service members, military families are targeted, right? Service members have a regular paycheck. They work for Uncle Sam. They get paid on a regular basis. Scammers know that, so that they know they've got money in their pockets. Service members also have access to education benefits and other kinds of benefits, and scammers will try to figure out a way to steal those. It's the same thing for veterans. Veterans have access to benefits that they earn through their service, and scammers are just going to try to find a way by hook or by crook to trick you into giving up a portion of them, giving them money, giving them your information so they can steal your identity and steal some of those benefits and services from you.
Just want to add on what Carol mentioned. As a veteran, whenever you leave the service, your focus is always trying to locate that second mission. That's a focus for us. And what better way to find that second mission for veterans is to, hey, how can I help my colleague that shares a very similar story of mine? We went to basic training together. We went to advanced individual training. They understand the lingo. We speak the same language. It's a connection that we just want to give back. And these scammers know that. And these scammers want to focus on a heightened level of insecurity, and then they can go in and do that. So that's why, I love what Carol said earlier about, temper your expectations. Don't try to do too much, and really focus on, is this making sense? You know what I mean? Does it sound too good to be true? And if it is, it does. So that's a big reason why these scammers are doing that. However, with everything that we have shared today, we are putting tools and resources back into the hands of veterans and military families, as well as civilians, so that we can protect them as we move forward.
Carol and Troy both said it very well. Be careful. If they're asking you to pay with a money order or a gift card, it's probably a scam. Here's a question I have for both of you. We talk about veterans and their families. So how about caregivers? Do we have any resources for veterans and their families as caregivers?
In terms of fighting scams and protecting from those scammers, all of the same resources that we've shared should be shared with caregivers as well. Because if the caregivers know those red flags that something might be a scam, if they've heard of some of those stories that are going around and how a scammer might approach you, but really most importantly, if they know that red flag, if somebody's asking me to pay in these ways that make it really hard to get the money back, let's end it right there. Delete the text, hang up the phone, delete the email. Don't talk to that person. It's a scam.
Well said, Carol. Just to expound a bit more, I've mentioned caregivers a couple of times during the webinar. Caregivers are the ones that are providing support to veterans, in their time of need. So the things that we've shared can be easily transferred. We have a military caregiver guide through AARP. That information there can be found at our aarp.org/veterans website. So that's a great tool that you can use in unison with the fraud resources that we've provided. But it's all about being armed, because when you make people aware of situations, they're more prepared for it. So yes, I'm glad that was a great question.
We build this event for veterans and service members. And I'm thinking about the service members' families. Are they ever targeted while the service member is off on assignment somewhere around the world? I can think of maybe grandparent scams being hit, particularly for that group.
Well, I would say anything that is targeting service members, a scammer is going to try to target the families. I mean, military families, service members, veterans are going to be targeted by all the same scams that, scammers are targeting all of the rest of us in the civilian community, right? They're going to try everything, but they may try, there may be a twist on the scams that target the military and the veterans communities. As I said, they're going to try to aim for those benefits that you and only other military or veteran folks have access to. But they also may try to gain your trust by saying that they are also service members or former service members, that they may come from companies that sound like a legitimate, like for instance, you see this with charities. A phony charity may have the word veterans or military or troops, operation something in it, so that it has sort of a military feel to it. They may use logos that look just like legitimate military or veteran organization logos. They're trying to convince you that they're trustworthy, like these other organizations. They're trying to gain your trust by claiming some sort of military affinity and hoping that you're not going to look too deep, and that you're just going to give them their money because you think you're donating to something that's going to help the troops or help a veteran's cause, or that you're going to buy something that is going to benefit the military community.
Well said, Carol. I mean, the only thing I could add is that absolutely what will happen is they will try to, we're talking about the caregivers of being that they'll just tell them the buzzwords that make them sound like they're really in the corner of veterans and saying, I had to do the same thing. I'm not a veteran, but I had to do the same thing for my family member. Let me tell you my story. And this organization was so helpful for that. So I know you have a copy of their DD Form 214 in front of you. Let's pull that out and verify some information. And just as easy as I made this conversation here, that's when a scam can happen. And again, there's so many things that can happen once your social is provided to someone without your knowledge. It can open up lines of credit and really cause a lot of headache for the veteran and their caregivers as well.
For online shopping, are credit cards safer than debit cards?
Yes, you've got certain protections with a credit card that you don't have necessarily with other forms of payment, right? So you can put a whole, a block to block the charge if, let's say you purchase something online and you don't receive it, or you receive something that isn't the right thing, or it's damaged. You can stop payment on that until you get it resolved with that merchant. And if it's a scammer, then you can try to work it out with your credit card company to work through that, so you don't end up having to pay for it. But if you paid with a debit card, that the charge just comes. It's a withdrawal right out of your account immediately, and it's a little bit harder to get things resolved. You obviously go through a similar process and try, but you don't have the same protections that you do with a credit card.
I agree with Carol. I defer to the expert there. So yes, I agree. If you can utilize if you have the ability to use a credit card, there's more protections there. And then if you only have access to a debit card, I would just check with the bank that's issuing that debit card to you and ask ahead of time, what are some protections if something happens, just so that you're prepared and you know what to happen there.
What some people do is they may have a credit card that they use just for online shopping. Mm-hmm. They maybe set up an email that is just for their online shopping and for coupons and for other kinds of things. So it's segregated from the rest of your email, your other transactions, your other credit card charges. And so it's isolated a little bit, and you can block it off from your other accounts if you feel like you need to. You should still take all the same precautions and make sure that it has a strong password, and maybe use two-factor authentication on that particular account and on that credit card as well. But then it helps you sort of segregate a little bit what you're doing with your online shopping and to track it a little bit. And if there's a problem, it's limited to that one card.
Carol, as she normally does, sparks things for me. Thank you, my friend. The two-factor authentication, I think it's something that's fantastic. Sometimes, it's an extra step, but that extra step really confirms that you're doing the transaction and not someone fraudulently. So if there's an opportunity to do a two-step authentication, sometimes you'll be asked, hey, do you want to remove this display, or do you want to continue it each time? I do it each time I have to access any of my online accounts. Just do it. It's an extra step, but it takes 10 more seconds. So just do it. It's information that and it gives you that extra layer of protection as well.
Can you suggest some legitimate organizations that support veterans to donate to, volunteer, etc.?
Well, I just have to say that I can't necessarily specify a particular organization coming from a government agency. We're not allowed to do that. But I would suggest that you get on to Charity Navigator, give.org. I'm sure AARP has got some charitable donation resources for people to check out some charities. So does FTC. If you get on, I believe it is ftc.gov/charity or ftc.gov/charity scams, but do a little bit of research and look around, and you'll be able to see what charities are most highly rated, where the most amount of money goes to actual services to veterans or to service members, military families. And then, I'd ask around a little bit and see where people you trust maybe you're donating, and sort of compare the lists, and then maybe come up with a plan for the year about how you want to donate your money. Because then if somebody calls you, reaches out, and you're not sure, if it's not part of your plan, it's pretty easy to hang up and say, I'm sorry, I can't. But again, as Troy mentioned, send me the website, and I'm happy to look around and think about incorporating them in the next year. And if they're legitimate, that's something that you can consider. But there are research tools out there that help you determine that.
I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but there's probably 40,000 organizations, that are out there looking to help and support veterans. What I would recommend, and Carol mentioned it, is to go to www.charitynavigator.org. And if you go to that particular site, that site will allow you to check the validity of these charities to make sure they are legitimate. And then it gives you lots of information to where you can contact them directly. And I think that it's always good when you're the one contacting the organization, okay? That organization freely and freely trying to reach out to you. So although we're not able to recommend different groups to go to, we would recommend go to www.charitynavigator.org and look up those charities there. But from a nonprofit, I hope I can say you can go to aarp.org/veterans, and there's some opportunities there for you to volunteer with us and help us in the veteran volunteer space in your local communities.
How do the scammers get the names and contact information for veterans?
I don't know an enormous amount about how scammers are operating, but they tend to maintain lists of people that have donated or given money, or that have perhaps shared information in a scam before, and they buy and sell those lists around. And then there's other ways that they can either hack in and get information from other kinds of databases or other people's emails, things like that.
Carol hit it right on the head there. Exactly. They'll do that. And then sometimes they'll just cold call numbers, and they'll just ask questions to determine if they are a likely veteran household. They'll ask those particular questions. It's very simple to say, hey, look, I'm a veteran. Hey, by the way, do you have any veterans in your household? Or, oh, my uncle was one, or my cousin was one, or my dad is, and I'm caregiving for him. Oh, well, I have some wonderful resources for you, or something along those lines.
It's very similar to how scammers may target Spanish speakers by cold calling lists of households where there is a surname that appears to be Spanish or Hispanic. And they'll just call them and see what they can come up with.
Don't ever forget, if you put a lot of information on Facebook, they could figure you out too. And they're really good at figuring those things out. And, sometimes obituaries also is a way that people can get information. Here's a question for you, and it's about all these scams. You even see them on TV sometimes. The latest one that intrigues me the most is this whole thing about Camp Lejeune. And we see ads on there all the time. And what I'm asking is, do you have any advice? Ties into, the whole legitimacy of organizations, either people calling you or seeing ads on TV. Camp Lejeune being the one that bugs me the most right now. Any words of wisdom there for you both?
I know that a lot of these Camp Lejeune ads and phone calls, I'm not sure if people are getting emails. I've seen those emails as well, maybe texts as well. I know in general, it's related to, a few months ago, there was a law called the PACT Act that was passed. And so it's just recently become law. And it expanded the how many veterans could access certain disability benefits through what's called presumptive claims. So if you worked at a toxic burn pit or some other, had other exposure to toxic materials during your service, then you're presumed that any disabilities that you have are from that service. And so it's expanding and access and making it easier to access those kinds of benefits, which of course brings the scammers out of the woodwork, because here's a whole new class of people that are getting access to more benefits, and there's more people. So it's like a whole pot of people for them to try to charge you a fee to file for those benefits, to try to get a percentage of those benefits, to try to trick you somehow into giving them money or information, and they're going to help you get to those benefits, which is all not true. And I know that the Camp Lejeune ads are sort of all part of that as well. There's a little twist to that, but I know that's where the scam originated from.
I'll just add a couple of other items too. With the Camp Lejeune, a lot of those ads are being done by local attorneys' offices that are trying to get you to come over and do that. What I would recommend two things. The first thing I would recommend that you do is to reach out. If you have any concerns or any confusions about the PACT Act, I would reach out to your local Veterans Administration's office in your local community. Go there first. And then, reach out to them first. And then once you set up a meeting, then go to aarp.org/veterans. And we have a one pager that lets you know all of the new benefits that are now available to veterans and their families as it relates to the PACT Act. And that link is on our trusted website of aarp.org/veterans. And then you can then take that information with you and prepare for your visit with the VA, so you can actually find out directly what benefits you're qualified for.
I think we have time for one more question. It's sort of the trendy thing out there right now, cryptocurrency. I recently got an invitation to a seminar to learn all about cryptocurrency. And if I gave them only $20, they would give me all the information that I would ever want to know about cryptocurrency. I think it's sort of like those, how to become a millionaire. And the trick is have the seminar and charge people. Is that happening to veterans as well?
Certainly. Again, it's happening out in the entire community. But if a particular set of scammers thinks that veterans may have the money and are interested in cryptocurrency, they're going to try to pull you in that way and get your personal information, get your money by having you pay for this kind of a seminar. It's very similar to other kinds of schemes that we've seen where, the scammer will want you to come in and learn how to invest in real estate, or learn how to invest in timeshares, or learn how to make a switch over to a new career or to work from home, or things like that. Cryptocurrency, as I said before, its role in fraud has just skyrocketed. And the bulk of that is from investment scams, from people impersonating some sort of an investment manager or a romantic partner on dating sites or on social media. They may reach out to people that are looking to date and profess interest, and can keep up the facade of that they're getting to know you and that you're in a relationship with them for weeks to gain your trust until you feel comfortable enough to send them some money. And they'll say, I'm going to show you how to invest in cryptocurrency, or I'm going to help you learn how to invest. I made all this money. Now I'm going to help you make this money. It's for our future. When we're married, when we're together, we'll need this money to build our future together. And of course, as soon as you send them, you might send them a small amount, and they might show you a website with a dashboard that looks like it's your money in an account, but and you might even be able to get some of that money back out. And so you feel safe, like, oh, okay, this makes sense. I've done this. This is a good deal. And then when you turn over the $10,000 or however much money, the person disappears, the scammer disappears because they weren't real to begin with, and your money is gone. And so cryptocurrency is being woven into both investment scams and to these other scams that are like a mixture of a romance scam and an investment scam.
Carol said it perfectly. Now we're taking scams that we talked about, and now they're intermingling the scams, to really add. And crypto is another piece of that. Again, it's current. It's something that's very hot right now, or a hot topic, crypto, just like with the PACT Act. So they're trying to find new ways to bring in new people into the fold so that they can, scam veterans, their families, as well as civilians as well. So well said, Carol. Good job.
I want to thank you both for this invaluable information that you have provided to us that is of help to all of us as providers of assistance to our veterans and our families, and to veterans and families themselves. And we truly hope that you enjoyed today's presentation. And until we meet again.